Ever get this feeling like we're missing something about ourselves, something kind of hiding in plain sight?
Yeah, like right there, but.
Well, get ready, because on today's deep dive, we're going somewhere you might not expect. You'll never look at yourself the same way again. We're talking about the body, B-U-T,
Big butt.
through a sociologist's eyes.
That's right. Totally different perspective. We're ditching the biology lessons, the self-help stuff. We're going deep into a book called The Lived Body, Sociological Themes, Embodied Issues. It's all about how this, then we call a body, way more than just, flesh and bones.
Okay, so not about, like, which muscle does what then. What's a sociologist's angle?
So, funny thing is, for ages, sociology kind of acted like the body wasn't even there. Absent presence, that's the term.
An absent presence, that's kind of deep.
Right. The early bigwigs, your Marx, Durkheim, all about social structures, the big systems. People were almost like minds floating around in it all.
But we're not just brains on sticks, right?
Exactly. And even those guys couldn't totally ignore that. Take Engels, Marx's pal. He made this link, get this, between capitalism and physical deformities in factory workers.
Whoa, that's wild. Never thought of that.
Yeah.
So how we set up society can physically change us.
Powerful stuff, right? And that leads to this idea of the symbolic body. It's like cultures take all their anxieties, their hang-ups, and project them right onto the body.
Okay, I need an example. This is getting kind of abstract.
Easy one. Our obsession with being clean, hand sanitizer everywhere, what's that about, really? One of our sources, Mary Douglas, anthropologist, should say it's our fear of contamination, of things being out of control. The body's where we fight that battle.
So it's not just absent. It's like a walking billboard for what freaks us out.
You got it. And this is where it gets even juicier. Foucault. He'd say it's not just symbols, it's straight up power.
Ooh, Foucault. This is where I lean in. Power how, though?
Not just something people have, but woven into society, working through our bodies, institutions, hospitals, schools, even gyms, they train us to act certain ways. He calls it the carceral aspect of life, like we're always being watched, even by ourselves.
Hold up, so it's not that we learn to obey, it's like it gets into our bones.
Ding, ding, ding. And the kicker, fitness trackers, calorie counting apps. We're putting ourselves under surveillance now, Foucault kind of called it.
Okay, that's a lot. From ignored to symbols, now we're controlled by our bodies, my head's spinning, and we're just getting started.
We're just getting warmed up. And before things get too dark and gloomy with all this power stuff, let's bring in a slightly more upbeat voice. Norbert Elias. He had this whole concept of the civilized body.
All right. A little optimism never hurt. Lay it on me.
So Elias, he was all about how as societies change, our bodies do too.
Wait, literally?
Not like we're sprouting wings, but how we use them, the rules we build around them. The civilized body, he called it.
So, like, table manners. We aren't born knowing which fork to use.
Exactly. Elias, he loved that stuff. The history of table manners, what we think is polite now, could have been barbaric a while back.
That's kind of mind-blowing. It's like we're carrying all these invisible rules inside us.
Nailed it. Like our bodies have this whole secret history of social change embedded in them. And it ties into another big thinker, Anthony Giddens. He was all about how we deal with the body in this crazy modern world.
Giddens, yeah. Wasn't he the modernity guru?
Modernity rock star. And one of his big things was this idea we live in a high-risk society now.
High risk. Yeah, no kidding. Every day it's like new crisis, climate change, pandemics, politics. You can't escape it.
And Giddens said that makes us reflexive, like always second-guessing, especially about our bodies.
So it's not just living. It's like, should I eat this? Go there, worry about that.
Exactly. And then add in how much information we've got now. Health, right?
Oh.
We know more than ever, which is good, but also...
Overwhelming. Totally.
Yeah.
I've diagnosed myself with like 5 diseases after Googling one symptom.
That's the paradox, right? More choice, but more anxiety about making the right one.
That's a lot. Okay, so we've got these norms embedded in us, constant risk assessment. And then consumerism enters the scene. That's got to complicate things.
Oh, big time. Consumerism takes that body as a project thing to the extreme. Now it's about curating an image, showing off who you are or want to be right through your body.
Like we're billboards now, but for our lifestyle, our values.
And our anxieties, for sure. One of our sources talks about this tyranny of slenderness, how for women especially, there's this insane pressure to be thin.
Yeah, sadly, that's relatable for a lot of people.
But interestingly, there's also this rise of like the muscular, controlled body ideal, less about being thin, more about showing you're disciplined, in control.
Like our ideal bodies have to be high achievers now too, reflecting that whole mindset.
Totally. A way to show your worth, your self-control. Speaking of complex desires and pressures, we can't forget about sex and gender. They're huge E.
Right. Like, you can't talk bodies without them. Where do we even begin?
One source gets into Freud, which, yeah, can be controversial, but he had this idea of the bodily ego and libidinal flows.
Hold on, are we doing psych class now?
But don't worry.
Yeah.
Point is, even these individual things, they have a social side, like libidinal flows, right? Ever notice how some ads, they just tap into something deep? That's understanding the libidinal body. It's not just your urges, it's how society uses them.
Whoa, okay, so like our desires aren't even really ours.
Well, they're shaped by everything around us, which is important when you think about beauty standards, right?
Yeah.
Especially for women, how that impacts how they see themselves, their bodies.
It's deeper than just looking good. It can make you feel like you're not enough just by existing in your own body.
And that can mess you up. Your mental health, your relationships, it's all connected. Body, mind, society.
This deep dive is wild, seriously. We went from bodies being invisible to this whole complicated mess. Social norms, power, now consumerism. What's next?
Well, let's switch gears to something a little different, but still connected. Emotions.
Emotions. Okay, now I'm really lost. We're talking feelings now. Emotions, huh?
Eh.
Okay, now we're really getting into uncharted territory. I get that our bodies aren't just these isolated things, but how do sociologists approach something as, well, feeling-based as emotions?
It's a great question, and it kind of gets to the heart of how sociology shakes up our usual thinking. We tend to see emotions as this purely internal thing, right?
Right, like they're happening in our heads, totally separate from, like, our bodies and the world outside.
Exactly. But sociologists, they see emotions as intertwined with both our bodies and our social interactions. One of our sources talks about this idea of emotion work.
Emotion work. Okay, first thought. Sounds exhausting. What is that?
Basically, it's the effort we put into managing our feelings, not just for ourselves, but to fit what's socially acceptable, you know? Think about jobs where you're constantly dealing with people, like customers or clients.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Like a flight attendant. They have to stay super calm and positive, even dealing with a plane full of stressed out travelers.
Exactly. Or a customer service rep fielding complaint after complaint. They got to keep a certain face on, even if they're feeling frustrated or totally burnt out.
Wow, you're right. It makes you think about all the subtle ways we're managing our emotions all day long. Like, I remember giving a presentation at work, and I was terrified inside, but I had to project this image of total confidence.
There you go. We're always doing this emotion work, putting on different emotional masks depending on the situation, and it's not always a bad thing. Helps keep society running smoothly, right?
Huh, that's true. Imagine if everyone just went around expressing every little feeling they had.
Total chaos. But there's a flip side. This kind of constant emotional labor, it can be draining, especially if it's part of your job. Burnout, feeling fake, all that.
It makes you wonder, like, who gets to decide what the right emotions are for any given situation? And who's left carrying the weight of that?
Now you're asking the really important questions. And it gets even more complicated when we remember those expectations, those emotional scripts we're supposed to follow. They change depending on our gender, our race, our social class.
I'm telling you, this deep dive has been mind-blowing. We've gone from the body as this absent thing to this incredibly complex picture, shaped by norms, anxieties, power, consumerism, and now even our emotions.
It's a lot, right? But that's the beauty of the sociological perspective. It helps us see all these hidden connections, the invisible forces shaping our lives in ways we probably don't even realize.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself, about why we do the things we do.
Exactly. It reminds us we're not just these isolated individuals, you know? Our bodies, emotions, our sense of self, all connected to the social world. These systems and structures all around us.
This deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it means to have a body, to even be a person in this crazy, messy world.
I'm so glad to hear that. And as we've gone through these sociological perspectives from that historical body problem to this modern body project, from discipline and civilization to risk, consumerism, even this emotion work.
It's amazing how much our understanding of the body has changed over time, and yet how many big questions are still out there.
And those questions are only going to get bigger as we move into a future where technology lets us modify and enhance our bodies in ways that used to be pure science fiction. So here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. What happens to our very understanding of what it means to be human as technology allows us to modify and enhance our bodies more and more? What new possibilities, what new dilemmas will this create for all of us, for society, and for the future of the body itself?